Well, I tell you the honest, it's such a pleasure, Dr. Afia Zakiya, Afia, to have you on this program on Bev's Open House. I know we have been talking about it now for about, oh my God, about 4 or 5 months. And I know you won't talk about yourself. So I'm going to start out with the introduction. So, um, one, I want to thank Afia very publicly for all the support that she has given to introducing youth to American Infrastructure Inc. She has risen. She said, I don't know whether this is a blessing or a curse to be what I call as one of our industry sector coordinators and experts, and which is very true. She is well, let me tell you all the things she is. She is a political scientist. She is an ecologist. She is a proud graduate of HBCUs. Okay. She is a Fulbright scholar. I had the pleasure of meeting her just as she was going to be a senior fellow with the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, specifically asked to come because of her renowned work internationally in the water sector. And that's when we first made it's been about 3 years ago now, that's when we first made our connection. And so she has worked internationally, but very specifically in Africa for many, many decades. She was, I think, over the US Ghana water project there. She's been renowned for the water sector work, but also a tremendous amount of work that she has done and she's a scholar, activist, doer, which is what I like. All of them, but also in the world of gender and gender parity and equality. And so it just, and then she's working with, I swear it's like, when you start working together, and she's also working with us at the national level. We're in the process of doing a very major study. There's some work going on, a very major study on infrastructure and jobs and careers in infrastructure. And she has been very much volunteering her support to that effort as we look at infrastructure in across the board in the looking at the issues in terms of workforce, but very much in terms of the challenges that we face in terms of diversity and equity and inclusion. So with that, so now and so I have to get all that out because I know she's not going to say it. Okay. And then so now I turn to you to say, tell a little bit about how because when I met you, I tell you, I have laughed with her so much. I said, Lord, if I had known everything the little bit that I had picked up about water, if I had known this 40 years ago, I said, oh my goodness, I said, I think you all would have mesmerized me to be in the water sector, because I will say this, that as our youth, every sector that they've been, and they get the indoctrination in, but they are fascinated when that water sector just acts up. They are absolutely fascinated after they finish getting their indoctrination from the water sector. So Dr. Afia Zakiya, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'd like you to tell us fill in some of those blanks, and then kind of how did you get into all of this, and a little bit about your journey, and why do you stay in it and love it and get everybody else enthused in it?
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Beverly, for having me here. I'm so excited to share a little bit about my life. I'll just say that I kind of find myself, what's the saying, jack of all trades and, master of none. But, I think I've mastered a few things. But I've started out, my father was in the military, in the Army, and so we moved around a lot. And so I experienced a lot of different people, cultures, just looking at different environments around me. And one of the things that I was always fascinated with was nature, was the environment. I used to go on long bike rides and trails in the woods and things like that. But over time, I began to, really want to know more about ecology and the relationship between humans and nature. And but that kind of was dormant for a while. I went to school and I went to, I, I did business, and then I did public policy. Um, but something happened when I started really becoming active in the education sector, actually. So I became active in struggle around the textbooks in California, the Houghton Mifflin textbooks,
Yeah.
back in the late 80s, early 90s in California, when I was a graduate student. And one of my friends, her son, was in school, and there was this big fight about the history and culture of Black people and how it was represented in those textbooks. And so, we were basically saying that, they were not accurate, they were not representative. So my political activism happened around that. And then I became, involved in African-centered education,
Mm.
African history and culture, and just a different kind of political consciousness,
Okay.
emerged. And that led me to, and I'm going to fast forward to Clark Atlanta
Yes.
University,
Yes.
um, my HBCU experience, where actually things kind of came together for me in terms of a lot of the different interests that I had. And when I was there, I did um, major in political science and African studies. I also did some, Africana women's studies courses. But when I was there, I was also working as a researcher because of my policy background in public policy. And so I worked at this place called the Southern Center for Studies in Public Policy. And when I was there, I did a study um, looking at environmental equity issues. And this was in the early 90s as well.
Afia, was that when Bullard and Mac Jones and them? Because
Absolutely.
we cross each other, but I've got some years on you, so I crossed before you. But
Yes,
that was the center where Dr. Jones and you had Holmes, you had Bullard. Okay, they were doing
right.
tremendous. Okay, that's what I thought.
So I was working with all these, great minds, men and women. Dr. Shelby Lewis, who had formed the Africana Women's Studies program at Clark Atlanta University, but she was also over the international program. And she actually was the one who got some funding for me to do my dissertation in Madagascar. And so I went to look at the impact of the environmental issues and deforestation in particular on women in Madagascar. So I spent a year there in the forest, in the climbing mountains, and
Oh
just
my God.
doing all kinds of interesting work. Um, and so after that, when I came back to the US, this is when Dr. Bullard and our colleagues at the Policy Center, we were all, the environmental justice movement was really, kicking off. And we did a march from Atlanta to Cancer Alley in Louisiana.
Mm,
And we ended up at Dillard University, where Beverly Wright
okay.
was teaching, right, her center there. And so it was just like this interest I had in the environment and the politics of
Oh,
the environment. And for some reason, the water issue, because water is a part of the environment, right?
everything. Mhm.
But for some reason, when I was thinking about, when I was in Africa, even in Madagascar, but other places, when I worked for a minute as the gender advisor for USAID Africa Bureau. And everywhere that I went to over 20 something countries in Africa, and everywhere that I went, there was always this issue, of course, of basic survival and needs, but looking at the environmental issues and the state of water, access to water and
Mhm.
sanitation issues for me um, was very important because of the public health, issues and the health problems that people had, of course, when they didn't have access to clean, safe water.
Yeah.
I began to be, very much interested in that issue, and I ended up working as the country director for really the largest international organization, um, WaterAid, as the country director, in Ghana for about 7 or 8 years. And it was through that experience that I really began to study as while I was, leading a team to actually provide and build the infrastructure, right?
Should be.
Working with local governments and the state government to move forward on the agenda of getting everybody, equal access to clean, safe water, not only in Ghana but really across Africa with the work that I was doing
Mhm.
in different groups.
See, that's what
But
I love about your work is that you have the policy side, the academic side, you have the scholar, the activist, and then the doing side of it. When I talk with you, like, and I can't wait until we talk about the program, the youth summit that's going to be in Africa this
sure.
summer with
Hmm.
American Heritage Society, the PANAFEST and everything. But the way you have in your life, people are usually one or the other. Okay, I'm saying they're the
Hmm. Hmm.
activist or they're the scholar or they're the doer from the institutional part. I work in the agency or I would, but you've woven them all, you've really woven them all together, Afia. That's very unusual.
Well, that was part of the teaching I had coming out of CAU. And I think even before, I worked for Ron Dellums when I was in California and in grad school. So, of course, from that experience, you learn that you have to, be an activist and do things to advance your community. So you use your scholarship, you use your whatever intellect or whatever it is you think
Mm,
to benefit your people and bring ideas and try to bring solutions. So I started from that background, and then had my experience at CAU. Um, and while that was happening, I was going back and forth, having opportunities to go to Africa for conferences. And the more I looked at these particular issues from an academic standpoint, from a scholarly standpoint, I had this thing that, okay, I need to be there. I need to be on the ground, the theory and the practice coming together.
yeah,
So if I was going to advocate for something, I needed to also be able to say that I actually tried to do it
yep,
somewhere.
yep.
And so that, I think that's where things have come together. And of course, for me, our African history and culture, being is the glue and the foundation of everything that I'm, looking at. I'm looking at it from the perspective of, well, what did our ancient indigenous African knowledge say about these things, but also looking at the contemporary issues and things that we're faced. How do I use my talents, the people who I know, who I've met, to try to come up with some solutions to real problems that people are having, and at least be able to analyze what, if not I'm doing, other people are doing, are really going to move the needle for the collective interest and benefit of Black folk, of African people, in terms of us really having a level of freedom, liberty, and moving out of the oppressed state that we have been in since,
Mhm,
our enslavement and the colonization of Africa, and really us here in the US, because the state of, our communities, especially these urban spaces where we are having these water crises
yep,
every day, the water affordability issue, the quality issues of water,
mhm,
all of these things are things that really, bother me,
mhm.
and I feel like I want to do something about.
Now, Fia, I'm gonna do it. We talked about it a little bit, but I'm so excited about I want you to talk about the African Heritage Studies Association.
Sure.
That is really so revered in and of its own right. I mean, it's almost like a little bit of being able to go home, because I started out in political science and all of this, and it was kind of my roots. And then I kind of went over into but you never lose it. Okay. And so the
Right.
work that you're doing, I think you're the vice president, the vice chair of the association. Now I know Dr. Ife, I believe, is the president. And then
Right.
the work that you're doing.
I certainly want to yeah, spend a moment talking about the African Heritage Studies Association. It's such a profound organization. I'm very privileged and proud to be the vice president right now. You know, it was started in 1968 when the Dr. John Henry Clark, Shelby Lewis, Ron Walters, others were a part of the African Studies Association
Yeah.
meetings. And they, of course, were challenging the hegemony and dominance of white scholars, telling and interpreting the Black experience, the African experience. And so when they were agitating for there to be, let's say, more equity in the academic world around African history and studies, you know, there was, of course, resistance. And they boldly decided that they would, you know, a collective would leave, and they would start their own organization to tell their own story, and not look through anybody's eyes, to talk about our past, our present, and the future interests and needs of African people. And so we are actually in our 52nd year this year. We are going to be having a conference in collaboration with the Pan-African Festival, which the short name for it is PANAFEST, in Ghana. And Ghana is special to us as an organization because Dr. Clark knew Kwame Nkrumah very well, the first president of Ghana, and spent a lot of time there as writing for him as a journalist. And so we are returning to Ghana. And this year we're focusing on the youth, and looking at the role of youth in the Pan-African vision that our organization has, and that, you know, Ghana has, but certainly in this particular climate right now, with what has been happening to African people here in the US, but around the world. You know, the resistance to our oppression, and people wanting to know more about their history and their culture. So we're going to be there, and we're having most of our sessions address, you know, critical issues that are facing our community, our global African diaspora community. And we're having young people take the lead to talk about these issues and to talk to each other, because the population in Africa, in fact, is about 70% or more, maybe even 80% youth, people under 35. So it's a very young continent right now. They have a lot of issues to still, you know, move beyond the colonial and neo-colonial experience that they, you know, still face. But we will be there. And I have been talking about my you know, environmental work, and the water issue in Africa. And so we're going to have a session which you and Aya will be a part of and are organizing, so that we will bring young people together to talk about, you know, what are the water and water infrastructure, quality, governance, you know, all these issues. What are they that our young people, both here in the US and on the continent, are facing? And because they're the future, right? They're going to be having to continue to work and resolve and address some of these issues. But for us, it's always, what framework, what worldview, how do you define the problem? And then, that will shape, of course, what kinds of answers and solutions that you come up with.
I think it's wonderful. Well, it builds. We're so excited. And actually, when you first told me, said, Bev, well, a youth summit, and it was so interesting because, well, of course, we were going to suggest that we would be able to do an infrastructure emphasis, because so much of this is, when you look at, infrastructure, jobs creation, the same kinds of issues that are economic and social issues that absolutely need critical attention in all of the countries. Okay.
Right.
But when you start talking about really the role that youth have played in change and movement across the world. Okay. And we were really pleased to have had the Abernathy youth, the kids, their family on, and they reminded us, okay, they said, Bev, when there were during the Montgomery bus boycott, Dr. King was 26 years old. Reverend Abernathy was 29 years old. Then they took us back. They reminded us of the Children's Crusade, the Freedom Riders that were all at the counters, the lunch counters, all that.
Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, all of those. Yes.
All of those.
Black Panther Party, all of those. Young people.
All of it has been young people. Okay. I was telling somebody, I said, and this, I said, look at the little girl that goes down to the United Nations from Sweden or whatever. I said, these are young people. Tenement Square. When you look at who are the part of the engine of change to be able to move change and transformation forward in these countries, it really is the youth in terms of youth empowerment. So we're really excited. And so our partners, and we're all, and I told them, I said, now, I'm old school. I said, but if we don't wind up doing anything, I'm so glad in a way it's virtual, because it's really opening up for youth, for participants that, would normally not be able to travel. And then I really want to acknowledge how kind you all have been to make sure that we will be able to offer for youth, that they will not have to pay to be able, that they're coming through these different organizations that we represent, that you're making it possible for us to be able to hook them in without having to pay a registration fee. So that's another one that's coming, everybody. Okay.
Right.
And then and I said like this, I said, I know when I was a kid, I had a pen pal. I had a couple of pen pals. And I was so happy because one of my pen pals was from Jamaica. So when that little letter would come, and it would have that different envelope, that would have that different stamp on it. It was a fancy stamp. It would have that different stamp on it, so they knew I was doing something international. And I said, the way, so what we're going to be doing is we're using this opportunity as well to knit our youth. Okay, I said, if they don't do anything, connect them. I said, if only 20% of them wind up making and retaining, someone that's part of their network, their social capital, then it will. So we have American Public Transportation Association is helping us out. I cannot say our anchor on the transportation side is the Conference of Minority Transportation Officials, the Chicago chapter. Okay. On the water sector side, with the individuals, Dr. Uzunda, and on the Ghana end.
Right, Azunda.
We have Azunu on the Ghana end, and then we're very pleased to have Naomi Davis and Blacks and Green and the Black Water Council in Chicago. They're helping, because Chicago is going to kind of be our story, our examples. And the South, are going to be our examples of what you can do when you bring good public policy and advocacy together, what these infrastructure programs really can give you in terms of good triple bottom line. And so we're very delighted to have them. And then another one that has stepped up is the counterpart of American Public, the partner of American Public Transportation Association, which deals with the transportation outside of North America, I would say, is UITP. And so UITP, they have a youth organization, and they're going to be, they're participating with us.
From Senegal, is it the group based in Senegal?
The Secretary General, Cisse, he is
he's from Senegal.
He's
Ivory Coast.
And he's the Secretary General UITP and representing
Mm-hmm.
13 African countries. And so he is, so we've been trying to do all this knitting together, but we
Mm-hmm.
would not have, we just want to thank you because we would not have had the opportunity to do this if you all weren't doing, providing the lab, the opportunity for us to do it, to have been focusing.
Mm-hmm.
When you came back and you said, Bev, oh no, we're really having a youth summit. Oh, I mean, it was just like, we are so thrilled, and to be able to have that opportunity to really give the
Yeah.
on infrastructure.
And I think that at the core of what we want to convey through our conference, and working with the young people, is that, and especially because of the virtual space now, right?
Yeah.
We have our young people from here, but it's also about knowledge production and exchange of ideas, and
Mhm.
that it's going to be coming from both ways, right?
Absolutely.
And one of the things that we have said is that the information flow, knowledge flow is not one direction, right? It's going to be coming from both directions. Our young people from here will be learning and
Yes.
hearing from
Yes.
youth from across the African
Yes.
diaspora,
Yes.
not just Ghana, but PANAFEST is a global Pan-African conference. And we have already identified, several different youth organizations that PANAFEST works with. Hopefully that all of these young people will be involved and, be a part of,
Yeah.
our session, just listening and learning and participating in the dialogue at some point. And as we said, maybe hopefully designing some future projects. We,
Yes.
as AHSA, we are going to be doing and possibly launching a water project in one of our members' village, while we're there. So that can be, a longer term
Absolutely.
project that the
Absolutely.
young people who are a part of this session that we do maybe talk about and see how that evolves and what that dynamics looks like.
Yes.
So it's really going to be exciting. It's really going to be an opportunity of cultural,
Yep.
learning and exchange,
Yep.
that we look for, and we believe that Africana studies, which is what we are about promoting, is going to be that vehicle for the exchange of knowledge to happen, of our young people from different, you know, people of African descent from different parts of the world come together and see Africana Studies in our organization as a vehicle that not only brings the curriculum and the teaching and the intellectual part, but also we want to deal with real life issues
Yep.
that they have and see, can we find African solutions to African problems, or what do we need to bring from anywhere else? But,
Right, right. Well, I
yeah.
know one of the things that the Secretary General has been very clear about, and he had just written a wonderful report, and he was basically saying that you cannot just bring, when you come to Africa, you cannot just bring all of your Western ideas to how you implement projects, how you finance them, how you do them.
Mhm,
It doesn't work. Okay, they're not interchangeable.
mhm,
That's not trying to say we're not going to work together. Of course we are, but it's that
mhm,
whole thing in terms of learned experience, and it sometimes it's not even intended to be arrogance, but it almost is an arrogance. Oh, we got the model, we got this. It was just that it was very nicely written, but it was just very clear about identifying things that if you're really going to be successful here, this is which, and a lot of it does have to do with culture. It has to do with a collective that it is a different, you're walking into a different frame and a different cultural space. Afia, I could go on with you forever, but if if you had to, is there anything I haven't asked that you said to yourself, you know what, I really wanted to share this morning? That's it.
Oh, um, what would it be? Well, I think that we are at a critical point in time in our history. and the and having this experience here in the U.S. And I think that it's clear to me that our humanity is still being denied, on a daily basis. And I think that there are some hard truths that we, as a people, need to come to grips with. And that is, I think that at most what we will extract from this nation, is reform to, this liberal capitalist society and economy that, you know, um, values things and materialism and, possessions more than people, more than nature.
Yeah.
And what I would say to any young person or anyone is that, it is really a paradigm shift, a worldview challenge that we have. Um, that is where the struggle is, in this contestation around ideas around what the good life, so to speak,
Yes, yes,
should be, what the normative vision of society is that we need to have, to be whole and to be human.
yeah,
Um, and that um, our first challenge is to know what it means to be African.
yeah,
Um, and if we know that, when we learn that, we will see our history has shown that we have been able to. African people were even here in the U.S. before Columbus, right? So if we know some of these things, if we go back to ancient Kemet, we can see that so many African people have been all around the world, and we didn't go around colonizing people and, trying to take their land and everything. So there is a way to exist, you know, um, in the world without feeling that you have to be supreme over others, right? That white supremacy and systemic racism is not the only way to be,
yeah,
in the world.
yeah,
And that it's going to take, our young people and all of us collectively,
yeah,
to work on, finding our getting, moving ourselves out of this, decolonizing our mind,
yeah,
understanding that, the majority of people in the world are African people, are people of color, and they have a worldview in a way that they related to nature and to each other and to the cosmos and everything, and that people need to be able to be themselves.
yeah,
And we need to look at um, how we can continue to make that a reality or return to that being the reality. So I would just say to people to, use some of this time to sit quiet if you can and listen for, whatever messages are coming to you, because our ancestors are always with us and they're always trying to communicate and tell us, show us the right path
sure.
to be on. So
Oh,
that's what I say.
oh, Afia, thank you so much. So, Afia, Dr. Afia Zakiya, it is absolutely an honor and it's been such a pleasure. And on July 30th, okay, you all be looking for this youth summit that's going to, our
Yes,
National Youth Summit, okay? And,
exactly.
and then if you give the AHSA again, what is it? It's WW. So if you, the people.
Yeah, our website is www.ahsa50.org, African Heritage Studies Association.
A pleasure. Thank you so much. God bless.
Thank
Have
you.
okay.
Thank you.